Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, and we have a very interesting guest with us today, Mordechai Rubin. Can we call you Motti?
Yes.
Very good. Listen, he's a very young man. How old are you now?
19 years old.
19 years old, and is a student, a rabbinical student, but really his origins are in Albany. Rabbi Yisrael Rubin, the head rabbi of the Chabad in the Capital District, is a son. He has many sons, but is one of them. So tell us about how you were raised in Albany and where you are today.
Well, I'm originally from Albany, as everyone knows, but I'm now in England, in Manchester, England, which is a little quite a ways away from here. But I grew up in Albany, and it's a very special place, special small Jewish community. And especially the Maimonides school that I went to as a young boy and grew up there till really through 8th, 9th grade. And it was a very special thing that really has a big effect on my life, and especially now in perhaps a bigger city, a bigger yeshiva, that the small Jewish community has a very special touch that everyone counts, and there's a special emphasis on the individual, and that's how perhaps certain skills or talents are able to come out that wouldn't be in, let's say, in a big Jewish community.
Well, why did you pick a yeshiva like Manchester, England? That's pretty far. I mean, there's other yeshivas, of course, closer. So
it's interesting. It's actually, truth is, I have a little family there, and it was a certain point it was a good thing that I was there. It was a divine providence that I ended up being there at that time to help out my family a little bit. But I originally was learning in Chicago in yeshiva there, and our class felt that it was a very good yeshiva and good fit for us, so we ended up in Manchester, and it turned out that it was a very productive and good thing for my family as well.
Yeah, as well, it's very interesting to talk about Manchester. You know, you don't think of Jewish communities, and there's all over the world, but London is one thing. Tell us about the Jewish community in Manchester.
Well, it's interesting. When I went to Manchester, I was told that it's a very big Jewish community in terms of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, but it turns out that generally, Manchester and really England as well, there's a lot of Jewish people that are very traditional. To compare a little bit to the Jewish community in America, so you have lots of different Jewish groups, and I mean, not everyone is so.
Do they tell their history from hundreds of years ago? I mean, because most people in America, if you say, "Where's your grandparents?" really, 99%. I mean, a few people have told. They're from the 1900s or maybe after World War II. But England has an older community. Are they still from the 1900s or even earlier?
People tell you? The truth is that there was an expulsion from England of the Jewish people, which is extremely interesting. There was a group of friends of mine that went to one of the holidays, maybe it was Purim, to a city called York, and there's a special situation there that you're not meant to stay there overnight because it was a very terrible thing that happened to the Jewish people.
They still held by that? Really?
Yeah, and so it was a very interesting situation, but they did find some Jewish people that were there. But most of the people there are also, there is a few people that go back maybe 4 or 5 generations, maybe to the late 1800s, but most of the people are, I haven't met people that are from really before the early 1700s or anything like that they have family roots there. It's just a lot of people, just like kind of in America, people came from after the war or when things were getting hard in Europe.
That's it's an interesting Jewish history questions, and I'll give the answer now, but people will not, and they'll assume they know the answer to that. They don't realize what the answer is. And what is the last country in Europe to be settled by Jewish people? People say Russia, Poland, because it's known to be a little anti-Semitic, but the answer is England. Which we consider our ally, the most open and free and liberal country out of Europe, and it goes only back to around the 1600s. And of course, Italy and Rome, they were there 2,000 years ago, for sure. So it's an interesting question. People would never answer it if they wouldn't know it, that England, you think is the most open country, and in a certain sense, it's a little bit closed. Maybe it's open today, but now I'm talking about hundreds of years ago. That's interesting. So there are, what is the size of the population of the Jewish community in Manchester?
I'm not sure exactly, but there's, I won't say a number because I don't really know exactly, but there's certain communities there that are even more like in the suburbs of the city. It's an area called Whitefield. Anyhow, literally it's almost like you knock on every house and there's Jewish people, their mezuzahs up, Not necessarily are they the Orthodox, but the traditional Jews, they are very, very involved. And it's interesting, they have in England Jewish public schools, where they have, basically, it's a public school, it's paid by the government, so all the things that public schools are able to get in terms of resources and technology and whatever they have. So they have Jewish, and like the uniform is to wear a kippah and tzitzis. So you see kids that when they go home are not necessarily on a Sunday are they wearing their kippah and tzitzis. In fact, even there's a special mitzvah of tefillin, and there's lots of boys that I know that they in school they do put on tefillin, but if they're there from school, then like they're caught. They didn't put on tefillin today. It's a little bit of a problem because it's just out of rote, like they do it because of the school ceremony. But it's also very special that there's such a strong infrastructure. I guess it's more of the European, but they really hold on to a lot of tradition.
And they teach them Jewish subjects?
Yeah, so they have, I mean, it's not obviously, the proportion is not extremely great, but it's a pretty sizable portion, 2 hours a day or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know about that, subsidized. They were trying to think about that in the United States, even in New York City. They have a school for Israelis, a school for Russians. So it's interesting. I didn't even know it's subsidized like that. They always try to get that in America because it's then, you pay taxes for public school. And on the other hand, that you have to pay full tuition for a day school. So at least for the English part, they're always asking for subsidies. But you can ask, but doesn't mean you're going to get. So far there hasn't been nothing. And they give certain things, of course, the school books, which are money. I mean, textbooks are given from the city, but otherwise it's not. It's interesting. It's a whole different system in England.
Yeah. Also, an interesting thing is that obviously there's a kind of an issue of assimilation in Jewry around the world. In England, the rate of intermarriage is very, very low, at least what I've seen. And most Jews are very, very traditional in terms of celebrating holidays, lighting candles before Shabbos, loads and loads of things that sometimes for people in America are new or they weren't educated about it. There, it's kind of common knowledge.
That everybody does something like that. It's interesting that they do that. Usually they say something like in certain communities, like in New Jersey, it's the Sephardic communities are very naturally traditional, but these are Ashkenazi people. It's interesting that they just have that kind of. Maybe is it because of England? You feel? I mean, people. Well,
generally it's kind of strange when you walk in the streets. The kids walking to school are walking with ties and suits, as if they're walking to a wedding or something.
Really, a regular kid?
They have their uniforms in the non-Jewish schools are very, very serious.
That's not Jewish public schools?
Anything. Really? Nothing to do with Judaism, nothing to do with religion.
I'm just saying sometimes private schools.
It could be that, you're right, I only see in private schools, but I'm saying the only schools that I do see are kids that are walking around with these ties. It's almost like probably you remember, I don't know if you remember or not, but probably like 50, 60 years ago in America, people were walking, the kids.
Of course, I'm 29 years old, you have to remember that. No, but Albany Academy has a private school.
But there they have, so it's very formal anyway. A lot of things are kind of formal. But I think it's also that, I don't know exactly how this works, but this is what people tell me, that also the younger generation in England now is like a generation behind American Jewry. I don't know why that would be, but I guess somehow that they're like a generation behind, so like their children are, I guess, on the same practicing level or just knowledge or education.
Really? It's interesting. I didn't even know all this. It's very interesting. Well, they always say for all like the movies and the rock and roll kind of things, it's always America's, which not good for Judaism, I guess, because they're always ahead of all the, all the assimilation. But America's on the forefront of that, also forefront of all those kind of societal. I don't know if you can say good or for bad. Depends which way you want to look at it. But it's interesting. I didn't know it was that traditional. Is this Manchester? You know this to be London
the
also.
The truth is that also the
Maybe
difference.
It's England.
I don't know London. I know there's these public schools in London as well because I just overheard that. And Manchester is a big city, and there are a few big cities, but the truth is that most of England, I mean, there's another city, Leeds and Liverpool, very small or other cities that probably have some type of Jewish structure. But, I mean, personally, I during the summertime, Chabad boys go and travel a little bit and visit Jewish communities that are smaller, that don't have their own rabbi. So I went to a place that's called St. Anne's, which is a small little town. It's next.
Near you?
It's like a resort type of place. It's next to the water, to the sea, and anyhow, we did meet people there that very much. There was a little synagogue there. We run to a little bit for the Shabbos, but the people there were there was some people that were literally not connected. They had no clue about anything. They just knew they were Jewish. So that was kind of special, meeting those people and speaking with them and giving them all we could about be proud of being Jewish and special customs that we were able to share with them. We did some mitzvahs. We actually put mezuzah on someone's door. That was very nice. And he had no mezuzah. And he lived alone. He didn't have a family, and that was very special. That was just not north England, but that's like just in the middle of nowhere. We met this Jew.
It's very interesting. So there's Jewish people all over the world. That's wherever you go, there you're going to find Jewish people. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, a little bit. I mean, Albany, I guess, compared to New York City, they consider us also very small, in the boonies. But we are the capital cities, but. You think that, you think in England you just don't know about life over there. But I guess wherever you are, you're going to find a Jewish community. Do you find it's been saying other differences between England and United States Jewry. You find any others? I mean, in their, you said about their observances, but
it's a little bit
kosher products, maybe, would that be? I mean, you go to the store, I'm
in a yeshiva, which we have a special cooked food that's very good chef. Thank God. But anyhow, a lot of the things that I do see that are a little bit strange is pretty impressive. Obviously, there's different views on chief rabbis in different countries, but in America, even most major cities, there's no rabbi that really has a say in anything to the extent that people listen to him. But in England, it's kind of a European, still aristocratic type of structure, but the chief rabbi's office, there's lots of, generally, let's say in the Manchester community, there's different shoals, but let's say this is the United Kingdom Jewish Orthodox shoals. I don't know what they're called exactly, but anyhow, these shoals they're very, very, like example, a little bit of a touchy issue. But if someone wants to marry someone and they're not Jewish, so it's not even like the rabbi will have to say no. It won't even work in the computer system. It's like they do they do research on finding out what's the background of people, if they're someone.
Is this locked up? That's really.
I don't know details, really, but I found out about this. Someone told me about it. So I don't know the details.
Very traditional.
But even like a Kohen is monitored as a Kohen there, and they look you up But the only issue is that if people have a hard time dealing with that, so then there's really no other in other words, there's lots of people in England that are Jewish. Not necessarily is their personal practice on a very, very high level, but they all associate themselves with Orthodox Judaism there. There's very, very small amounts of other types of groups.
Well, it's interesting.
I personally haven't seen any other synagogue, temple, anything of any other group besides Orthodox and a little different.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It could be there is. I just haven't seen. I'm sure there is, but it's not something that's, something on.
Widespread like here. It's the majority is non-Orthodox, and Orthodox is very small. So it's very interesting. I know there's a chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Sachs. Again, you don't. I think at one time around the 1900s, Jacob Yosef, forgot his name, but there was a chief rabbi of America. They tried to do that in America, it just didn't go. Americans are just so individualized, I guess. They don't want to group together. But it's very good. So, it probably makes for a better comprehensive Jewish community. It's like the kosher is...
The kosher level is very... there's very little monkey business going on. Or everything's very clear and...
What's that?
I'm not sure there's... Like in America, everything has a kosher symbol. There in the stores, everything's on lists. But I don't know if everything... There's kosher things that are not they don't have this
symbol.
I think there's lists that people use.
Know about it. Yeah. So that's very good to be. There's an advantage to being just centralized and everybody doing their own thing. It's amazing. That's what keeps the Jewish community together. Maybe it's interesting. I'm just trying to think while you're saying that. Maybe it's the English culture because there's a queen, or used to be a king, queen. So that's their mentality that there's one central figure and there's one authority. So that's, it rubs off on, the Jewish community, as much as we always like saying, well, Judaism, all Jewish people have their own, obviously, lifestyle and keep apart from people, but it does rub off on you we're the country you live in. So America's so open and liberal, so that's kind of the Judaism also rubs off on everybody. Hey, I just do what I want, and you can't tell me what to do, which is in a more of an American kind of idea. In England, hey, there's the Queen, it's the Queen this, there's the authority, and everybody does what they're told. So they realize, okay, we have one chief rabbi, and he's the authority. It's interesting, though, but I'm just trying to think that maybe that's what it is. It finally, it just penetrates that kind of psyche into the Jewish mind also. So there's something good about that, I guess, the authority. In any case, that's it's good. Now, you say you've been in yeshiva. You've been saying how England. We're talking about the outside world. Let's take you inside the yeshiva, and what is interesting. What's a student's day to day? I mean, people know a college student, you get up, not everybody, but 10 o'clock in the morning, and you get a week vacation here, and you get three months off there in the summer, from middle of May to whatever, end of August. So tell us, compare and contrast that to a yeshiva student.
So, not to blow away everyone with a little numbers here, but we get up around 6:45 in the morning, and our first class starts at 7:30, which is a preparation for the prayers of the day, and it's a very special time when we reflect on our own lives, and it's mainly the studies of the inner meanings of the Torah, which is called Chassidus, and that starts the day at 7:30. We start praying around 9, and to put it this way, we finish officially at around 9:45 our studies at night. We have like a little breakfast break, an hour of lunch, a lunch break, an hour of supper break, and it's a very special thing. I mean, for people that are hearing this, it sounds kind of amazing that people are able to sit through such a day. But this is, as Rabbi Simon probably has told before, but Chabad is a very special group of Jews that are very dedicated to go around all the world, be there for the Jewish people in every community, and so it's kind of like a training grounds. If you take like kind of an army base that enables you to gain the skills that you will need to be in any situation, helping Jews physically, spiritually, wherever you are, and that's why it's kind of an intense schedule. We do a lot of studying throughout the majority of the day. The main chunk is a lot of studying of the Talmud, and now we're actually learning about laws of marriage, different scenarios and different situations, which have lots of ramifications, not just in that area, but all through the Torah. And we learn Code of Jewish Law to have basic understanding in the Code of Jewish Law. We also study a lot of the Rabbis' teachings, which inspire us afterwards to go out to the world and really see the love for every Jew and affect them as much as we can and what we can do for them. So it's a very packed day, but it's kind of like I was speaking to a guy on a plane. I met a guy from West Point on a plane. He was actually going to Oxford. I was on the way back to England. He's from Oxford. I mean, he's from West Point, and he's going to Oxford for this special conference.
Class or conference?
He said that it's like a mini United Nations there, so he was representing Afghanistan. Like, he's a very smart guy.
I mean, Afghanistan.
In other words,
from West Point.
No, that's their job. They have to study countries to the extent that they know it so well. They can speak.
That's interesting. Okay.
But that doesn't help anybody or doesn't lose or gain. It just that's what it is. But they have this mini, like he told me, it's like a United Nations there. So he wasn't a Jewish guy. I was sitting next to him on the plane. So I started schmoozing with him. I started telling him about there's something called the 7 Noahide Laws, which is interesting that the Torah doesn't just have a view for Jewish people, but there's a view for all people around the world and all of humanity. There's 7 Noahide Laws, which are interestingly, Maimonides says they were given by Moses at Mount Sinai. There's something special that they're not just things that are moral and ethical, but they're divinely given. But anyhow, we were schmoozing together on the plane, and he tells me, I asked him, wanted to know, I was interested about this thing, because I keep on telling people about my day-to-day life in yeshiva, and they say, wow, it's like a boot camp and this. So I asked them, they have laws in the army, I wanted to just find out, and he told me incredible things. I mean, punishments that made no sense. You sleep in class, or 2 times, 3 times, you're walking something called hours. You walk around this little block in West Point, and like for hours, like at salute, just you walk back and forth. So I said, how do they explain these soldiers? They're coming out of American schools, high schools, and whatever it is, how it is, doing whatever they want, and they're coming to this, so even if they're a little bit, patriotic or whatever it is, this is the West Point, this is the officer school of America. How do they explain them that these rules have any logic to them? What's going on? So he said that when he walks in, he got a book about, this thick, like a telephone book with just rules after rules. They have to read through them, And in the beginning, they explained to them, I said, how do they sit them down and tell them this? he said to them, he said that, they, and I'll be open with what happened. I also asked him about different rules about, it's a big deal nowadays. People are worried about the separation of men and women that's in a synagogue or different places. Why is that important, or why is that for the best of us? And I asked him, and he told me incredible things that you never believe that go on in West Point, of rules that they have regulations. They said that a male and a female can't sit down in a barracks on the same flat surface. You have a bench. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, what could be wrong? So I was very interested to find out what do they explain to these people, because I know it's something that I would like to also, I've learned about it, I've studied. I just want to know how would the world, the secular world, understand this. So he says that they sit them down, they say, listen, we're an army here. We need to be as effective and powerful as we can. And he says that to be effective and powerful, you have to be kind of just like a little bit above your own understanding and follow along with the rules. Because if you constantly are putting in your own understanding of things, so they kind of, not to break you down, but they want it to be very professional. They don't want there to be, friendships and relationships. They want it to be very professional because they have a kind of a mission to go for. And if these are the leading generals or the officers of the military, so they need to be pretty hefty guys. So I would just related this. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, but you can realize that this yeshiva, or the Chabad yeshivas around the world, are kind of like the officer schools. And so therefore we have a very intense program, and most of the boys there, hopefully, I understand that most of them understand, this is not something they're imposed upon them, but it's something for their best, to really cultivate a group of officers, or in Hashem's army, in God's army, of not fighting with weapons or anything, but bringing light to the world and spreading it as much as we can.
I like your explanation. It's very interesting. I think it goes well over here. I think it's a good explanation that, in certain places that, there's higher standards. If you want to have higher standards, it's not like oddball, because it's just saying, well, if you're in a specialty program, then there's going to be higher standards for you. You have to rise above the masses. So I think it's excellent the way you looked at it. It's a good thing then that's the West Point. He had his uniform on?
So I asked him all these type of questions. Like, he told me, but normally, when they go, right when they get out of the airplane, when they go to Oxford, they have to be in army uniform. Right. And they actually had they had on the plane with them this guy that was one of these, I don't know if he's a professor or general, someone on the plane. And I asked him, what are you going to tell me? I mean, are you afraid to tell me things when he's like he can overhear? Yeah. And he said that whatever he's going to tell me is just, you can probably look it up on. But it was very, very interesting, the discussion we had. I mean, I was planning on going to sleep because I was very tired. Yeah. We went the whole flight. It was literally like 5-6 hours thing when we were just schmoozing all day.
How old was he? Was he young?
He was 21 or something.
Just like
and he was very impressed, especially with a kosher meal that I got. We had a whole conversation about eating kosher, and he was very. It's amazing. Sometimes you think that people are kind of, you're religious, or this or that. But if you stand what you have, and you show them that you really care and you really believe, people respect you. Great people. I mean, this guy is. He's he's gonna be, or he's. The school doesn't have loads and loads of kids. These are the officers of the United States Army, and he was incredibly impressed and respected what I might live about the kosher meal and different things.
People are, it goes hand in hand, I think. People who are in a higher discipline respect people with the discipline. They respect people who can go to the higher standards because he knows for himself. Others say, I do what I want. Why do you then someone's looking at, a person that has standards. Why do you have to do it? Who says? I do what I want. Why can't you do what you want? So someone who knows that there's higher standards understands, fine, that there's higher standards that have to be kept. I've seen that in many times. Even with food, people are on vegetarian diets. They understand. You just don't eat whatever comes to you, And so one said, I have also a special diet. Oh, okay, I respect that. So it goes hand in hand. We have a few minutes left, Matti, and I just wanted to, goes back and forth, really. You say you started with Albany, and you, of course, you were raised up here. I know you're from there, but, how did it really affect, maybe. It's not like obviously you say you're in Chicago and now in England for the good few years and you're here just on a few weeks of vacation here and there, but how did maybe your life in Albany affect now that your worldview that you've been now traveling around the world?
Well, I spoke in the beginning a little about it, but it's very, very special that here you really see what every person has and certain skills that perhaps wouldn't be elicited or brought out by a person talents are brought out here in Albany, and that was a very special thing for me. So even though I went to perhaps bigger cities, I always had this thing in mind, and I used to even tell my friends and my colleagues about this, that, I mean, a lot of them also are emissaries of the Bob Rebbe around the world, so they also kind of had this thing. But some of them, even if they were in big cities, I don't know, in LA, and, you know, big places. And I always used to tell them how important it is and how special it is that you're able to realize it's not Judaism is not about numbers or big things, it's about reaching every Jew. And that was something very special, especially when I was in Manchester. In Chicago, I'll tell you a quick story that happened just very, very briefly. Anyhow, it's a long story. You have to hear another time if you want to come. You can contact me. But anyhow, the story goes that I was basically on a train. Fridays is the time you have off from yeshiva, and the Rebbe said that really a yeshiva student is supposed to be totally immersed in his studies, and it's very important, like we spoke before. The reason why on Fridays it was picked the time to do kind of student outreach to the extent the students can is kind of because it's free time. And the Rebbe said it's like, you know, there's a fire broke out, and if a fire breaks out, you don't start saying, you know, I'm a student, I'm doing studies, I can't have time off. If you have time off, you gotta you run inside and work it out. So the point was that anyhow, I met a certain Jew on a street corner in Chicago, down to Chicago. I meet him. I offered to put on tefillin, do a mitzvah. He says no. So anyhow, make a long story short, 3 hours later, I'm on the back of a train. I fall asleep on the train. My friends went off the train. I was in a different car for various reasons. And it's right before Shabbos, and everyone knows that a religious Jew before Shabbos, and I woke up with a panic. I didn't know what to do. It's getting very close before Shabbos. And I don't know how I'm going to keep Shabbos. I have no idea. Anyhow, the conductor woke me up. He wants my money. I don't have money. Okay, long story. We got off the train at some random station. I know where I was. And there was this guy that's 3 hours ago I met. And I turn around and I say, man, this is a crazy... He was discussing, he doesn't believe in miracles, different things. I said, man, this is incredible. I don't fall asleep on a train Erev Shabbos before Shabbos. My friends left. I don't even know how I'm going to keep Shabbos. But we met, and he agreed to put on the phone. And it was something very special that he learned also. But from this thing, we treasure very, very small, special things. That's what's incredible about growing up in Albany, that you really care for every Jew, no matter what, no matter who, whatever, back when they come from. But they're the individual that's very special.
I think, yeah, in a small community, you have to treasure everybody. I mean, you should have to treasure them wherever they are, but you think, oh, in New York, there's so many, no one needs me, you know, no one's important. And I always say, this is just, we only have 3 more seconds, that, you know, in our Chabad house also, we have just about 10 people, which is a quorum. I says, here, you know you're important, you know, you made something in the world, who needs you, you know, you're just a number. So that's an important thing that, well, glad to have Matti on, and like you say, maybe come back with a few more stories on next vacation, so we'll check in with you again. You have a lot of good stories, good lessons and success in your studies, and hopefully for our viewers that we gave a glimpse of a yeshiva student's, rabbinical student's life. Thank you.